supported by viewers like you. It's not just storytelling, it's culture. PBS Hawaiʻi, home is here.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we live and work. On the next Insights, our election coverage continues with 2 races in the State House. Residents in District 45 on the west side of Oahu will be electing a new representative. Hear from the Republican candidates who are trying to advance. And in the Democratic primary for District 37, Central Oʻahu voters will decide between the incumbent and a newcomer whose father was a revered Hawaii politician. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. In less than 2 weeks, Hawaii voters will be receiving their primary election ballots in the mail. Tonight, we focus on 2 races in the state legislature. Up first, the GOP hopefuls for House District 45, which represents Waianae and Makaha. It's an open seat as the current representative makes a run for the state Senate. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii YouTube page. Now to our guests. Tiana Wilbur was born and raised in Waianae. She's a mother of 4 boys and currently serves as the chair of the Waianae Coast Neighborhood Board. And Chris Muraoka was also born and raised in Waianae. He's the father of 6, a business owner and Navy veteran. He's also a member of the neighborhood board. And I'll go to you first, Chris Muraoka. What are the big issues popping up, in Waianae when you hold these board meetings? What are the things people are most concerned about?
Well, thanks for asking. First of all, thanks for having us here. As you said, I'm a father, I'm a business owner, I'm a husband, and I'm a grandpa. And there's a lot of issues that's facing us out there in Waianae. Historically, we've been ignored for so long. Some of these issues have just built up over time. But the two issues that really stand out is the overwhelming increase in crime, as well as our homeless population issue. Now, there's a plethora of issues that we need to address. Those 2 are the front runners.
Tiana, anything to add to that? I mean, we've heard that before. What do you think people want right away?
So that is definitely the top of the list, and right now it's not what we can do when we're elected, but what we can do now. And so those are the things that we've been striving for, is connecting diligently with the different resources and programs that we have actively, whether they're nonprofits, churches, or our council member and her project with the 3 R's, in how we as residents can help kokua in resolving some of these issues. Because truth of the matter is, whether it's city or state, a lot of these requests won't come through, or we won't see any progress in maybe 2 years, right? And that's because of the process and everything that it needs to go through before we get approvals, or the studies need to be done. And for us as a community right now is, how do we work together? And it doesn't matter what political party, because right now, even right now in this race, we're first community members. And as a community, we want to see more unity in our community. And when we do that, when we are able to work together collaboratively across the board, I believe as far as public safety and as a community, we all agree that we will start seeing more positive structural changes as far as the safety of the community, because there won't be so much heaviness and burdens that's happening right now among us.
Chris Muraoka, what do you feel like, when you talk about crime, what do you think is the root cause out there of the rising crime?
Upbringing, the high cost of living. Parents have to go out and work. Many of them have to get 2 jobs. Therefore our school system is raising some of our kids. Our kids growing up, they look for leadership, they look for mentorship, and unfortunately, without the structure starting at home, they find it elsewhere, and it's not often the right mentorship or the right leadership that they need. I strongly support sports, organized sports, because it keeps kids occupied, it keeps kids cohesive, and it teaches them coachability. It helps them adapt, it helps them work together, it helps them, run into problems and then fix it. And coaches, for the most part, I'm a coach, youth athletic coach as well. And, we help kids, we teach kids. That's one of the things that we can do, is we can be a positive influence. Cost of living is definitely a cause.
Let me give Tiana Wilbur a chance. On the crime issue, it is sad, because when you read the stories about the crime out there, often it's someone who's 17, 18, 19 years old, they've got a weapon, they're out wilding at night. There's, it's from what, Chris is saying, the first thing you ask is, where's the parents? Where's the parents? And he kind of semi-answered it, but do you feel like that youth problem is really part of a big issue?
That is, and I've had active conversations with our school principals and just different leaders in our community in how, as a community, we can come together and help with that. It was literally 2 weeks after an incident at my son's school that the stabbing happened, and there was just so much heaviness, because we were trying to tackle the bullying incident and things like that, and it does come from upbringing, but also parents need to work, and if they're a single family home and they're working multiple jobs, they don't have that influence. So Boys and Girls Club is an organization that I do help, and I do serve on their board as well. And it is a positive environment for kids that don't have that extra support at home to come and receive extra support. But it's so much more than that. Not all the kids can attend Boys and Girls Club, or they're not in that reach, in that sphere. So again, being a resource to our own neighbors, being a good neighbor, and how we can support those families.
Let me ask, there's also a tendency to have an argument over whether you should get tough on crime, tough on kids. Some places they're charging 15-year-olds as adults, things like that. How do you feel about whether the laws, which you'll be dealing with as a legislator if you're elected, should be changed in order to deal with that kind of crime?
So I think it would be very beneficial for us to incorporate family engagement in schools again. And by doing that, we will increase the participation, of families, but also the parenting. There's so much resources and opportunities that we can give to the community, because parenting is an issue. Hurt people. And when we maybe grew up in a unsafe environment, we don't know anything else. And so that generational cycle continues. And so how do we fix that? How do we change that? How do we support each other in that? And that's really the vision that we have moving forward, is that, and there's so many opportunities. I just was in a meeting this morning with family engagement groups, and they have the McKinney Vento Act and the funding for that. And so, but the thing is that what was clarified today is that it's not that you have to be homeless on the beach. If there's multiple families in one house, if your electricity is off.
I'm going to stop you just so I can give Chris a chance. On the tougher laws, do you feel like the laws are part of the problem? Because, again, as a legislator, if you're elected, that's where you'll be dealing with it.
Absolutely not. The laws are not tough enough. The crime, the punishment should fit the crime. Absolutely. Far too often our police get the blame. Far too often the police get the blame. The police are undermanned. They're close to 400, almost 500 people short.
And there's not many out in the West Coast either.
Yes. When they do their job, the judicial system fails us. If you're 15, 16, 17, 18, you know what you're doing. Whether it be out of fear, out of spite, out of anger, you know what you're doing. The there's no excuse. Our judicial system must be tougher. They are failing us miserably right now.
Let me give you a chance to respond to that. Do you want to respond to that?
So as far as being tough on crime, so again, it's getting back to the foundation of family upbringing and things like that. And if we could curve that by being more actively involved and positively engaging in our kids and providing those things to them on a social emotional level, whether no matter what you're going through, if we can touch them as children, then we would. I strongly believe, and I know others have agreed with that, in that we will definitely see a lesser crime rate. But we also, for me personally, I don't. When I look at the different cases that come about, we got to stop blanketing things on all levels. So when it comes to crime, it has to be individually looked at per case, not because, and I say that because for one of my children, he's passed on to glory and he'd be 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And because of the geographic location and things that we came from, and we're Polynesian, there's a stereotyped case of, and wrongfully charged for murder in the second degree for my children's father. And so going through that ordeal for 9 years total has been truly eye-opening to see that, our justice system, I believe in it strongly, and I believe that criminals and the acts, they need to be charged accordingly, but also we need to make sure and ensure that through our justice system, we're taking all the proper protocols to individual cases, not everything blanketed under one. Same thing with the homelessness. It has to be individualized.
Let me give Chris a chance to talk about homelessness, and then I'll come back to you. On the homelessness, the second big issue you mentioned, where do you see the legislature, the state, needing to get more active to do something about homelessness, as a legislative representative?
Well, first, the legislature needs to get involved with these nonprofits. We need to have absolute transparency in these nonprofits. Nonprofits have grown tremendously, and homelessness has not gone down. So we need to have transparency in nonprofits. I feel like a lot of these nonprofits just get involved for the wrong reason. Nonprofits can go out there and they can serve a hot meal, and then they'll get grant monies or federal monies or whatever it is. The churches used to do this before for a long time for free, and because they truly cared. The churches used to take people in. I see too many nonprofits nowadays just feeding hot meals and going home. I feel that we need transparency. We need data. What is going on with all of these nonprofits? How can we identify that they're actually successful?
So I think most of those nonprofits, I don't know which ones you're talking about specifically, but are supposedly trying to get those people into services off of homelessness. Is that where you see them failing, that they're not actually moving people off the streets? Absolutely. Okay. Tiana, your perspective on the homeless issue.
So, actually it's great that he brings that up, but honestly, a lot of the nonprofits have direct connections and they do lobby inside of the legislative field when it's session. So say they are actively involved in legislative things, but the information doesn't get to the community, and that's a huge barrier as far as the communication between government and our people. And that's one thing that I hope to bridge that gap, that there's no more of that disconnect between government and the people, because it should be transparently given on what the fundings are going to, because this is back in 2022 when this particular testimony from a homeless individual was part of one of the projects happening out in Makaha, and they said they did all the paperwork, because a lot of them lose their IDs and identification and things. So the nonprofit organizations help them and walk them along through that process. And the day before she was supposed to get the keys to her home, she was told that they lost funding. And so those are the things that the homeless individuals, they want help, but because they're already down at their very lowest. And when we come and say that we're going to give all these promises and we fall through or fall short, it becomes like even more detrimental to them in their healing and in their moving forward. And so I hope that we can stop doing that, because a lot of them do want the help, but because of so much broken promises and it's so hard for them to continue trusting the systems that are currently in place. So we have to do better with that.
One of the issues that's always comes up with the homeless issue is the drug issue.
Yes.
And where do you see that on the coast? Is that getting any better? And again, is there a role for the legislature that's not being done that can address that? Drug abuse in particular.
Man, my heart just breaks when it comes to that, especially seeing our people in that state of mind or in living in that lifestyle and things. The best thing, I really don't know what exactly our legislators could do, because honestly, some of those things are happening right in our own community. They're cooking it. There's facilities there that it's being done actively, because before I used to ask the question, well, how is it coming in? But I mean, it's obviously coming in somehow. Same like the illegal weapons or the ghost guns, you know. So there's so much like that's such a complex question for us to like dive into in this time.
Yeah, so Chris,
definitely,
Muraoka, your feeling about, is there anything that can be done or that should be done about the drug problem, not just in your district, but
statewide? So here's how I feel about the drug problem and homelessness. They don't always go hand in hand. What I feel is we need to, again, hold these nonprofits accountable, because they're going out there. There should be data. We need to identify, number one, residents. Are they residents of our community, or have they been shipped in? Like, there's proof that they have been. Number two, there is a substance abuse problem out there. And number three, there are working poor. There are people who are struggling that don't have substance abuse, that are residents, that are unfortunately on the beach. We need to focus our efforts on that core group first. Once we help them, because those are the people who truly want to be helped, then we can focus on the residents that suffer from substance abuse. And I support legislation that would force the substance abusers into treatments. And if they don't take treatment, or if they don't voluntarily take treatments, or they don't go into treatment when they're forced, then we need to show them tough love and start pooling benefits.
Okay, now I've got a question from a viewer. And I see this too. I mean, I live in Makakilo, and sometimes when I'm going home, I see a traffic jam that's coming from Nanakuli. Traffic is a huge issue for folks on the west side, and we only have one way in and one way out during emergency. How would you fix this? Tiana, what do you see as the priorities for those issues, which is two issues? One is traffic, and the other is emergencies. So
I'm not going to make that an I thing. It's going to be a Kako thing, because there's going to be a lot of variables. We're going to need the state. We're going to need the military, because there's different areas in our moku, in our community, that we could potentially have access to, or create another way in or out. I know one of the concerns that came up in a town hall is that they told us, be careful what we ask for, because if they see development as far as putting in another road, that means more housing. And so you know, there's definitely a review that needs to happen, and it needs to be brought to the community for community's input in what is the best action for it. And we have a lot of kupuna that we can seek ike from that has been trying to battle this traffic issue for some time. I mean, we have at least 80% of the workforce coming from our community. So another way also is, what other opportunities can we provide to our own community for them to work from home, or for them to build their own business, or, you know, just other opportunities where maybe we have less cars on the road.
Let me give Chris Muraoka a chance. What do you think is the solution on the traffic issue in particular?
You know, I don't have an immediate answer. I have some opinions, but I do want to state that this is a particular point that our leaders, representatives, senators, and even further up, absolutely failed us. Not only the current ones, but the ones before them. Waianae's been one way in, one way out since before I was born. I'm 47 years old. It's not a secret. The infrastructure should have followed the building. Sea Country is a huge addition on the same roads. We got up in Makaha, Mount Olu Estates, they got the whole new cabin system. Huge improvement, much more, thousands of people, same roads. So I feel like there needs to be a new road. Do I think the
Like
current
a new
road?
road like another route in, or a new road like a bigger highway?
Well, another route. Absolutely another route. And here's why. At 47, I remember Hurricane Eva and Hurricane Inouye. If we had a hurricane come tomorrow, we're doomed. You know, everybody's praising this new bypass road, and that'll alleviate 40% maybe of the traffic. Unfortunately, where the road starts, it's too far in.
But
the traffic is all the way out to
Aren't they like
Campbell.
right next to each other at some point?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's my point. That's the point I'm trying to make. Not only are they're side by side, in the case of an emergency, a heavy rains or a hurricane, Pa'akea floods.
It's going to take the road.
Pa'akea floods. As a lifelong resident of Waianae, if Pa'akea floods, that dip gets up to 8 feet deep. That stops all traffic. Now, we know that our infrastructure on the highways is not good. Under a hurricane, those poles are coming down. I guarantee it. That shuts that road down.
Let me just
let me make one more point before.
Go ahead, quickly.
So we need to plan ahead. We need to start thinking further down. If you go between Miley Point and Hikino Road, we have 2 bays in the ocean that 10 years ago you could drive past. They are encroaching quickly. We're about 25 feet away before that's an issue.
Right.
We need to take a serious look, stop pacifying, stop keeping us just satisfied by hearing the things we want to hear, and they need to start taking action.
I want to give you a quick chance to respond to that. Do you feel like, as a legislator, you could get, the difficult things, you folks are running as Republicans, even if you win, you'll still be a minority. I'd like to ask both of you, first you, Tiana Wilbur, how could you be effective to get something like that, get stuff out of the legislature?
I know that is the uphill battle that we have in the Capitol, but I am hopeful and optimistic that no matter what party we belong to, what's right for the people, what's best for the people should be seen, should be heard, and should be put forth. Because if elected, that's my position, is to bring the voice of the people to the Capitol to do what's best for the people, and that's entirely what I hope to do, and I've worked with a lot of the Democratic legislators, and they're great, and I don't see any hindrance as far as us being able to work together, and I just hope that either way it goes, whatever's best for Hawaii, whatever's best for our people, that we always put that in the forefront when we're serving as public servants.
I'd like to give you about a minute and 15. How would you be effective?
I think the effectiveness would come from my experience as a business owner. 2 things. Number 1, I'm not afraid to rattle the cage or shake the tree. I'm not. I go against the grain daily. And 2, I've also learned through business and being a business owner, how to work together. How to work with somebody that I may not agree with, I may not align with, but we have the same goal. And as long as we have the same goals, emotions and prides and egos and personalities need to be put on the side for the better of that goal. I have a proven track record of doing that.
Okay, well, I think that we can wrap it up. Good job, both of you.
I just want to make one final
15
statement.
seconds.
Is earlier in my bio, when I submitted my bio, it's a chair of neighborhood board. So it's an annual position, and so I'm happy to say that another candidate actually is now the chair of our neighborhood board. So I just wanted to clear that.
Oh, good for you. Good. Thank you for clearing that up. Okay, so we want to thank our 2 Republican candidates for State House District 45, Tiana Wilbur and Chris Muraoka. As we get ready for our next segment, here's a story from a Hikino student who tells us what she's learned about reaching across the political aisle.
When I was in middle school, I experienced firsthand just how divisive politics could be. Speaking with a friend about the appointment of pro-life Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, the conversation turned sour when I said I agreed with his views. My friend said that hopefully one day I'd change my mind and never spoke to me again. Since the ending of that friendship, I've changed my opinion on that issue. But I can't have that conversation with her since she's blocked me on all social media platforms. Lately, I admit, that I've been in more heated discussions with topics ranging from reproductive rights to universal health care. I was frustrated because I couldn't figure out why my peers wouldn't hear me out. Why should I listen to what they had to say if they weren't planning on listening to me? Then I got involved in student council and my perspective changed entirely. After serving in various leadership positions at Konawaena High School and at the state level, I got to represent Hawaii at the United States Senate Youth Program in Washington, D.C. In March of 2024, I joined 103 other student delegates from every state, the District of Columbia, and 2 military bases. Before my trip, I admit, I was apprehensive. I held preconceived notions about people across the political aisle, and I didn't want them to tear apart or ridicule my beliefs. Then on the second day of the week-long program, I found myself standing in front of the portraits of former Presidents Donald Trump and Barack Obama. There, I engaged in a conversation with gun violence with students who opposed gun control. Turns out, they were just as nervous as I was. They were scared I was going to attack the belief system they grew up with. As we talked, we found out that both of our families owned guns and that we both prioritized safety. I learned that they valued guns for their livelihoods and they saw it as a method of defense. We ended up coming to a middle ground where we agreed that our government should revisit gun regulations and our culture should establish more respect around handling guns. I will never forget the moment that we all shook hands and my new friend said, "You are the first person I've met from your side of the political spectrum that's been willing to hear me out." It reminded me of something my student activities coordinator, Mrs. Hayashida, always said: to attack the idea, not the person. That's when I realized that I was part of the problem, blaming everyone else for what was going wrong in our country. How can I help solve this problem if I'm not even willing to talk about it? Leaving high school and entering university as a political science major, I will be collaborating with peers of different political ideologies. My trip to DC has taught me what I need to do to overcome my own prejudices. As an aspiring leader, my goal is to unite us all and to share the values that I've learned growing up in Hawaii. But in order to do that, I need to take the first step. This is Lehua Norris from Konawaena High School for Hikino on PBS Hawaiʻi.
Now to the race for State House District 37, which covers Mililani, Koa Ridge, and Waipio Gentry. There are 2 Democratic hopefuls looking to advance to the general election. Trish La Chica is running for her first full term in office. She was appointed to the District 37 seat last year by Governor Green. Prior to that, she spent 15 years in leadership roles in the state and county government and nonprofit organizations. And Ken Inouye is making his first run for political office as the son of the late Senator Daniel Inouye. He grew up in the Washington, D.C. area and spent as much time as he could in Hawaii. He currently works at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu. Let me start with Representative La Chica. I shouldn't call you representative because you're running for the office. So, Trish La Chica, what did you learn, though, in your year in office? What did you learn, and what would you try and fix if you were reelected?
It is my freshman term, and in this last year, I've been very grateful to have been able to serve in a position, committee position. So I was the vice chair for the House Committee on Education. So we worked a lot, on issues that impact our public schools and our students. What I did learn is there's a lot of collaboration that happens in the House. I felt very supported. I felt that I was in a position to advocate for the things that my community really needed. I was encouraged to speak up, and I felt that despite this being my first term, because of my experience of being in public health policy, of working in government, I've had several different sessions of just building relationships, both with my House colleagues and my Senate colleagues.
Thank you. And Ken Inouye, what possessed you to run for office? I mean, you haven't been a politician before this, and you're a fully grown adult. So I'm curious, what made you decide to run?
Well, I have to say that it's based upon my experience in the community. As time went on, and as my wife, daughter, and I got more absorbed into the community, you develop a real aloha for the people, for the place. And you also start to understand, how you're similar. We all are there trying to do the best that we can and try to, provide things for our children that they need, and that's what a lot of folks in the district.
Let me ask, when you go out and you're campaigning in that area, we just did a session on very rural, it's not that rural, but on the west side of Oahu, which has some really significant high-profile problems. We don't hear much about problems in Central Oahu, Mililani. What kind of issues are coming to you as you're running for office? What do people out there feel are the immediate needs that they need from state government?
Probably the issue that comes up with the greatest frequency are surround the challenges that are confronting them as a result of financial pressures. Things like the cost of housing, the cost of groceries, being concerned whether or not their children are going to be able to find the kind of jobs that they're training for, the kind of jobs that they want, and whether they're going to be able to find housing when they move out, as well as whether retirees, because we have a lot of multi-generational families, whether folks who are retirees are going to be able to stick around in Hawaii.
Trish La Chica, what's your perspective on that?
For our district, which it is, the beautiful communities of Central Oahu, Mililani, Waipiu, and Coral Ridge, it is growing concerns on public safety. People choose to live in this district because it's absolutely the best place to live and raise our families. People are proud to live there. But we experience increased homelessness, crime, and a lot of traffic and pedestrian accidents. Just not last year, we had that acid attack. We had that person who ran a lady over at the Walmart parking lot. So it does leave residents feeling vulnerable. And cost of living issues does really impact us. And I feel like it does affect families, our ability to stay and remain on the islands. And so it's really addressing affordable housing, it's improving our public education and cost of childcare. And finally, it's really looking at local good paying jobs to keep our families here on islands.
So you go on with that a little bit more. Cost of living, I mean, there was a substantial tax relief that was passed by the legislature this year. But I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to change people's lives much. The cost of living is huge here. What kind of more dramatic things do you see to deal with the cost of living? I'll start with you, Trish.
Yeah, so House Bill 2404 is the largest and historic significant income tax cut in our state's history. For a family of 4 with, 2 full-time workers, making like $150,000, that's about $5,000 that's saved over the course of several years. And it's really money that goes back into their paycheck. Over the course of those years, we'll see up to 40% of our income taxpayers who will not be paying any income taxes at all. So that is huge. However, we do need to do more. They don't feel it because of inflation. And there's very little, of course, outside of state control that we can do to address inflation, but there are things within the state that we can do immediately. I think we should pass a GET exemption on our groceries, right? Our local produce, eggs, milk, meat, even medicine. I think we should also look at our skyrocketing electricity costs and what we can do to switch to solar and maybe bring those costs down. And of course, finally, it's looking at the jobs that will enable us to remain here in the state.
Specifically, Inouye, on the cost of living, where do you see the pressure points where something can be done about it?
Well, for instance, one of the issues that has been brought up when I talk to residents is the cost of housing, because a number of the families they are wondering whether their children who are living with them are going to be able to move out.
The houses that are being built out there, they're not cheap.
They're not at all.
There's a lot of houses being built out there.
So when I'm saying housing, I'm talking about housing just overall in the state. I think that one thing that could be done is try to address the issue of illegal short-term rentals. There are a lot of illegal short-term rentals out there that, were they to be turned into, converted from, illegal short-term rentals to, standard longer-term rentals, that could help provide more of an inventory of rental properties for people to, get that starter home, that starter ability to move out, that sort of thing. That's one thing that has been suggested, and I think is a good idea.
You know, Trish La Chica mentioned crime, and do you see people, are you hearing a lot about crime there, and where do you think needs to change in order to prevent crime from getting out of control in your U.S. community?
Well, you know, she's very, there, you know, the incidents that she mentioned are very high profile. They have been reported on the news, and there are a number of others as well that have made the news. So that sort of thing definitely does create concern. And you know, also, I'll be candid with you. You know, one of my neighbors, they were robbed a few months ago. So, you know, that is a concern. I have talked to a number of former police chiefs as well as current police, and the themes that continue to come up when I'm talking to them is the need to have more visible police patrols, as well as more community policing, because the community needs to feel comfortable, you know, bringing things to the attention of the police, and that helps them a lot.
On crime, what do you think the legislature needs to do to address the crime issue?
I think there's a couple of things. You know, first, you know, legislatively, it is a balance of supporting our law enforcement and making sure they are fully funded and fully staffed and fully trained to be able to address crime and manage, you know, repeat offenders. We also really need to look at the root causes of crime, so really looking at programs that support rehabilitation and reintegration so that those that do have sentences that allow them to be reintegrated back into the community are able to become productive members of the society. But more importantly, I think at the community level, which is something that I'm really proud of, is after the series of crime that had occurred in our district, we convened a large public safety community meeting, which was attended by, you know, over 100 residents. We had HPD Chief Joe Logan there and even Mayor Blangiardi there to address the families directly. And as a result of that, we were able to form and establish 10 neighborhood security watches in the district. So this approach of working directly and hand in hand with police really enables us to take back our neighborhoods and really enables us to keep our neighborhoods safe, not just for our Kiki, but for all residents in our district.
Let me ask you, and I ask this in all of these things, individually, what makes each of you feel like you could be particularly effective? You know, so Ken Inouye, what do you bring to the table as a legislator that will make you personally effective in the legislature?
Well, I have a high value for working with others on issues. I have been in my entire professional life, as well as you know, my upbringing. I have learned to value working collaboratively with people, always trying to find the common ground and trying to, you know, get past the sticking points, get past the points of opposition that people might have because of certain conflicts that they may have with others. But you know, if you can find the common ground that exists between all the different parties and work towards that, you can get a lot done.
You know, yourself, one of the things that I hear from legislators all the time is that the younger legislators, the freshmen, even the subject matter committee chairs, ultimately everything still goes through the leadership. I mean, do we have a legislature, and I'm wondering if you think, that is truly open to the ideas and input from the legislators other than the ones at the top of the food chain?
Oh, absolutely. You know, a great example is when I first came in last year. This was after all of the bills had already been introduced. And so I had been able to work on a bill, specifically a bill to regulate and enact comprehensive regulations on vaping. It wasn't something that I personally introduced, but leadership gave me the opportunity to champion it. So for me, if it's something, you know, that it's something that I had worked on as a public health advocate, it's something that's very important to our Kiki. I was given the opportunity to meet with leadership, to meet with the chairs, and to really fight big tobacco, which is something that took us 9 years to pass. And so last year, you know, I was very proud of that accomplishment, that after so many years, we were finally able to get it to sign into law by Governor Green. And I feel that it's not really about, I feel like, who you know or the relationships that you've had prior to entering. I think it's really about each individual, each representative's ability to really fight and push for change and do it in a respectful way. And I feel like my background in coalition building and being able to work across, and listen to all voices is something, it's a unique perspective that I bring, and that's why we've been able to get things done for my community.
One of the things that did not pass this year was a lot of the efforts to, for example, have publicly funded elections. There's talk about term limits. There's talk about a number of reforms to sort of break up the entrenched political class. Ken Inouye, I'm just going to say this out loud because I can't think of another way to say it. Your dad sort of represented the good old boy network in Hawaii. I mean, he was the guy, right? He was the man you came to. How do you, coming from that point of view and also seeing this demand for reform, and as a new legislator, what do you support when it comes to reforms that will perhaps bring more public trust in government?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, increasing the requirements for reporting and disclosure in regards to lobbying, because I believe that one of the things that really has a detrimental effect on public trust is this feeling that there is this pay-to-play sort of environment. So I do feel that increasing the requirements for lobbying reporting and such would go a long way towards doing that.
What about the specific idea of public financing for elections?
Well, I think that's a very interesting idea, but I think that to some degree, I mean, when I've talked to some people about the public financing of elections, there is some concern about a candidate getting public funds that is somehow unsavory to certain people. So I mean, I think it's an interesting idea, but there are a number of issues I've heard on the other side of it.
People don't like to have their tax money go to somebody they don't like.
Yes.
Trish, Trish La Chica, that bill pretty much got bottled up in the House. Did you even have an opportunity to vote or debate that particular proposal?
No, I think, I support a lot of, good government and a lot of reforms because, the perception and the impact of corruption does really affect, our democracy. It really does impact the way that folks not just engage with the legislative process, but also how they vote, right? We have much lower voting
Well, this
turnout.
election, there's hardly anybody running.
That's true. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm in office in the first place, is I do believe that, government should work hard to make sure that the people we serve should never, ever have to feel powerless. And it really comes from my background in advocacy. I feel like I've been there before where we've felt heard and ignored. And that's something that I've brought to this office, is just continuing to prioritize my community so that they know that they are valued, they know that they're heard, and they know that they absolutely have a representative that's going to fight for the changes that they need.
What about other reform ideas that are out there? Is there, some increasing reporting? That's great, but is there anything that you do see that would help get more new blood into politics? As a person now just coming into it, what can you do to get people excited about politics again?
Well, as someone who's always been excited, I guess, excited enough to be involved
Sure.
and to vote and come out, that's the real conundrum. I mean, to me, in order for people to want to get involved, they have to feel that they will be heard. And one thing that I will say is, when I'm going door to door, that's one thing that people always comment on, that I'm there, that I'm listening, that I'm paying attention, and I'm following up on their statements with more questions to get a sense of what they're thinking. I think that if you have people in the legislature that are making it a point to show their constituents that they are heard, they will come out.
What do you think? Are you distressed by the fact that there's so few people running? I think, do you folks even have a Republican in your
We
race?
do.
We do.
You do have a Republican. So we'll be back for the general election with one, I'm sure. So, but I mean, it seems like people are at a low point in terms of their wanting to be active.
So to me, one of the things I'm passionate about is working with our youth. So as much as possible during recess and session and after session, I visit all our schools, and I love going into the classroom. I love doing civic engagement. I love getting our youth involved in the decisions that will affect their daily lives. And so this session, we have a bill limit in the House. And we have, I worked with the Mililani High School students to craft and push a bill that would improve local school meals. And it was something that generated hundreds of testimony, student testimony. They even came to and participated in the legislative process. And although it died at the very, very last day of conference, of session, it did, create this opportunity for them to see that this simple movement, this simple idea can transform an entire community. And it's something that I absolutely will continue to push for next year.
I just realized, Ken Inouye, that I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about taxes. Trish La Chica mentioned the tax reform bill that was passed that dealt with the income tax. Do you feel that it went far enough or helped the right people? There are some people in the legislature who feel like it, and particularly advocates for the poor, that say the tax reform needs to be more oriented toward lower income people. I'm wondering what you think of the tax structure. Do you feel like there should be tax relief in different ways?
Well, I definitely believe that there should be tax relief for people who are in lower income brackets. They are the ones that are most sensitive to any fluctuation, whether it be tax or the cost of groceries and whatnot. So yes, I definitely favor more favorable treatment to those in lower income brackets.
Anything specific, like she mentioned taking off the tax on groceries? I think you mentioned that tax is also applied to rent. But are there particular areas you could see reducing taxes or even increasing taxes on some people?
Well, I do think that making it. I think that just across the board for lower income people, they need that relief. I mean, one thing about the tax cut that you're talking about here is. It is providing much needed relief to a citizenry that is already feeling a lot of economic pressures. Having said that, though, in all likelihood, we're going to have to take another look at that bill because all figures show that in a number of years, we're going to be, the coffers of the state are going to be running rather low. So we have to take another look at that tax cut in the years to come.
The question did come in for you from a Mililani resident, for Representative La Chica. You say you want to get rid of the general excise tax, but what would you do to replace those funds with? Things like education are funded by the excise tax. How would we pay for those things without it? To make this question a little bit more specific is, where do you see we need to spend more and where can we spend less if we're going to be cutting taxes?
Right. So I'm confident that the legislature will always pass a balanced budget. It's absolutely necessary. And our budget
I think the one they passed this time wasn't balanced.
And when our budget is our moral document, it's a direct reflection of what we choose to prioritize. And I do feel that in terms of looking at new sources of revenue, we really need to look at out-of-state investors, and I really feel that they need to pay their fair share if they have, for example, they make the top 1-2% of income earners here in Hawaii. They will pay a larger share. I do feel that we also need to tax vacant and empty homes. So much of our housing inventory sit empty, and those can be freed up for local homeowners. And I absolutely feel that we should look at our state budget and start to make smart decisions about what we choose to prioritize. To me, I want to acknowledge, we do have some wasteful spending. And, Governor said he's going to look at some of the existing positions that may need to, we need to get rid of. I do feel that we really need to look at data and better reporting to look at which programs are producing meaningful outcomes. Those need to be invested in. And the ones that don't, the ones that keep getting funded year after year but aren't really transforming our communities, I think we really need to make those hard decisions and start to eliminate those programs that don't work.
Inouye, do you have a feeling about that, of where money could be shifted or saved in order to really make the budget balance in the long term? You mentioned that you're concerned about them running short of money.
Well, I will always advocate for money to be, guided towards education, because at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's one of the most important things that we can guiding our resources towards, because an educated citizenry is the thing that we really need to move forward. And we talk about the need for economic diversification and such like that. The only way we'll ever have economic diversification is if we have an educated workforce that's able to fill those jobs when those economic engines of growth are generating.
You actually just reminded me of a question. It's in here somewhere. What do you favor? Where do you see the economic engine of the future? And again, I think UHERO just reported once again that we are over-dependent on tourism. Where do you see coming up with something other than tourism to provide enough jobs to sustain this community? Well,
I don't think that, having talked to a number of folks who are in business, as well as a number of folks who are economists and such like that, the impression I'm definitely getting is that we are not going to be finding a silver bullet in one, economic sector, or even two. We are going to be looking to try and have a number of them develop, because it's just not feasible for one to really kind of be the. So can you
suggest two or three that?
Yeah, I mean, one that comes to mind is one that we have had in place ever since before statehood, and that is film, television, and multimedia production. This is something that we've had in place for decades here, and it provides thousands of jobs. It brings money, a lot of money into the state through spending that is done in the community. On average, you have about $600,000 a day end up being generated in a local economy through on-location filming.
Let me give Trish La Chica. Where do you see the direction to diversify the economy?
Now, there's lots of things I'm excited about. I think first thing is being able to look at growing sectors such as clean energy, because Hawaii does have a mandate to be to be able to meet our 100% clean energy mandate by 2045. So there's opportunities to grow that sector, solar, wind, geothermal, and I feel that technology is another sector. The pandemic really changed how we work and choose to work. So a lot of folks work from home. And those are also competitive jobs, and jobs that enable folks to work, directly from home, from the computer. And I think that there's also a need to preserve the existing jobs that don't require us to have a 2 or 4 year degree. These are, construction and trades that enable somebody to begin at $22 per hour. I'm really looking at jobs that will enable you to have one job, right? One job should be enough for you to be able to afford a home and start a future here in Hawaii.
Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes left, and so you looked like you wanted to jump in.
I just want to add one thing.
Real quickly.
Regarding the film and television and multimedia industry. The thing about that to keep in mind is we are creating graduates in these programs through the University of Hawaii Creative Media Program, as well as the Waianae High School Sea Riders Program. We are having young people ready to work in these areas, And the problem is they're being exported off to the mainland because that's where the jobs are. We have no shortage of talent here. We do have a shortage of jobs simply because we have not developed this industry more in this area.
You know, how do you pick and choose an industry? And we've only got about a minute left, so let me look really quickly. What tools do you use to encourage an industry like that one? How do you get an industry to grow?
It really does start with our strong educational system. I do feel that, University of Hawaii, there's so many opportunities for growth. We need to have public-private sector partnerships. Look at Waipahu High School, for example, where they have a health academy, a clinic where kids can not just learn on the job, but it'll give them direct opportunities, a direct pathway to the healthcare jobs that will, enable them to start a career in healthcare here.
Got only about 30 seconds more. Tell me how you get that industry to get bigger, or any industry to get bigger.
Well, you do that through making the economic environment around it a little bit friendlier. I know that a while back there was a bill put forth to try to raise the cap on the film tax credits, and I know that some folks are not comfortable with messing with the tax laws. So I know that in other cities they have used a rebate program to good effect. So, I mean, there are a number of ways to try to do that, I'm sure.
Okay, so wow, that was a very fast 25 minutes. Mahalo to all of you folks at home for joining us tonight, and we thank our guests, the Democratic candidates for State House District 37, Trish La Chica and Ken Inouye. Next week on Insights, another doubleheader. We'll hear from the candidates running for the Honolulu City Council District 5 seat, as well as the Democratic candidates for State House District 14 on Maui. Please join us then. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and